Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to do all the settings that I would recommend for the Samsung Q80B. I'm going to do SDR, HDR, and then gaming SDR and HDR. We'll also go through the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 and how to set those and games with sliders. And we're going to go through all the settings and show what they do, and if you want to use a different set of settings than what I suggest, you'll at least have some information on what each setting does so that you can decide what you're going to use. There's quite a bit of variance from one panel to the next and also from one update to the next. This is going to be using firmware 1430. However, the settings should put your panel closer to being accurate than what it is out of the box. First thing we're going to do is go under General and go to Power and Energy Saving and just disable everything there pretty much that affects the image quality. And then we can go back and we're going to use Filmmaker mode. And if you disable that in Filmmaker or in Movie, you may have to do it for the other if you're going to use more than one mode. Now in SDR, for the brightness, you want to set it lower so that it helps your black level, but 25 seems to be pretty good middle ground value. The contrast, we want to lower to 35 so there's less clipping. Sharpness should be at 0 for neutral, no added artificial sharpening. And then color, we're going to turn down a few clicks to 20 to fix some of the oversaturation. Tint shouldn't be used. And then the picture clarity settings I'll show in another part of this video later. Local dimming in SDR, pretty much you can just leave it on low. Setting it higher will increase the brightness, but it will cause your blacks to raise. From there, keep contrast enhancer off. When we get down to the white balance, these are the settings that worked for this panel. They may or may not work for yours, probably less likely to be exact, but might move it in the right direction. And that is with the color tone on Warm 2. Under Gamma, we're going to use BT1886 and leave it alone. The gamma on this TV with this firmware is pretty messed up. That's the best value all around. I don't suggest using the 2.2 at all. Now you need to play HDR content so that the TV will switch to HDR, and now we can change HDR settings. Brightness needs to stay at 50. Contrast, lower it at least to 40. On this one, 38 was kind of the best spot for it because there is a lot of clipping, but you do lose peak brightness when you lower contrast. Again, sharpness needs to be 0. And then here with this particular TV, color actually needed to go up a little bit to 28. So you could leave it at 25 or try 28. Tint, again, we're not going to touch. Now we'll look at the picture clarity settings. So I would recommend leaving this off. However, this is kind of personal preference. So this is where your motion settings are, as well as the noise reduction. So if you set it to auto, it automatically picks the stuff. If you do custom, blur is going to affect your higher frame rate, so 60 hertz stuff like sports. And then judder is your motion for 24 and 30 hertz, so your general TV and movie content. Generally, I hear people like 2 on the judder reduction for Samsung. LED clear motion, that's your black frame insertion that will cause the brightness to go down, and it causes flicker. A lot of people don't like it. And then noise reduction, that's up to you if you like that effect or not. Again, I just turn off the whole menu. Alright, now local dimming should be on high for HDR, and contrast enhancer, as usual, should stay off. Color tone, again, we're going to keep it in Warm 2. And then the white balance settings that I got for this panel, again, are for this panel. They may help yours. You can try them. It is different from one mode to the other. So now going back to the gamma setting, which in HDR is going to say ST2084. With Filmmaker mode, we're just going to again leave this at 0 and 0 for the shadow detail. As you can see, if you lower it, it's going to get darker. If you increase it, it's going to get brighter and a little more washed out. But at 0, it does follow EOTF as closely as the TV can. And then shadow detail on this particular model, again, we're going to leave at 0. Color space setting should stay at auto, but I will go in more depth to show that setting as well. And then that's the end of the picture settings menu here. Now I will go down through the menu here to show that it is firmware 1430. So if we go back to the color space, if you go to native, it sets the TV to its native color space, so as white as it can. And if you go to custom, well then you get to pick between DCI-P3 and BT2020. And then when you go to auto, it doesn't auto switch anything. It's just going to be whatever you have custom set to. So by default, custom is going to be set to DCI-P3. So the auto setting will always keep it in DCI-P3. If you switch it to BT2020, it's going to oversaturate the colors and be inaccurate. So the best accuracy setting is the DCI-P3, or just leaving it alone in auto. Now what's interesting about this TV is the colors are not at 50-50-50 for DCI-P3 like I've seen on every other TV. They didn't balance it to exactly 50-50-50 for whatever reason. They're just varied depending on the color when in the P3 setting, and resetting them puts them to whatever they are set to. So that was just a interesting thing to see. Now if we go to gaming, we're going to start with using Destiny because I can set the sliders in the game, and it's also game HDR. So we're going to go to this menu here, and then you'll see that the HDR10 Plus was off and the game HDR/HGIG setting was on. That goes against some of the other models, but for this model, that's the correct way right now. Just a quick rundown through the settings here, and then back up, and we're going to go through. Brightness, again, stays at 50. Contrast, here it's a little bit higher to try and keep some of the brightness in gaming. So 45 is a good middle ground for gaming. Color can stay at 25, or actually I think it starts at 30, so turn it down to 25. Tint, we're going to leave 0. Go down. Local dimming is going to stay on high. Contrast enhancer is off. So high and standard are going to be fairly similar, but there are some differences. Low you don't want to use in HDR content. All right, now as we go down more, the color tone is still going to be warm 2. White balance, a little bit different in the game mode, but again, varies TV to TV. Gamma setting, ST2084 at 00 with HGIG is the best that this TV can get to, and as you can see, when the HGIG is on, the ST2084 setting doesn't work. Not unless you were to use contrast enhancer, but that would really mess up the image. So you pretty much just gotta leave it like that, and that's all you can really do. Now in a game like Destiny where you have a brightness slider, the peak brightness of the TV was around 800 nits, so we're going to set it to 800, and then we're going to set the console settings to 800. I didn't show it here, but in Destiny in particular, that midpoint setting should actually be 30 on an LCD like this, but that's not really a big deal. So moving on, now we're going to do SDR game mode. So a game like Fortnite is going to be in SDR. All right, you saw the game bar popped up there. We will look at that in a minute as well. So when you first go into game SDR, everything's going to be cranked up here. First thing, I'm going to turn the sharpness down to 0. And again, that's just removing artificial sharpness. Color, we're going to turn down to 25. And then contrast is definitely going to be clipping a lot at 50, so we're going to put that to 40. Brightness, that's going to be whatever you're comfortable with. Again, in SDR, the lower you set it, the better your black level will be. Contrast enhancer, this is just showing what it's doing, but definitely going to turn that off. Local dimming, again, you could put it in low because it's SDR. If you want to leave it in standard or high just so that you get more brightness, if you really like bright SDR gaming, you can do that as well. Color tone, back to warm 2, and then the gamma setting we're going to leave at BT1886, and then by default the color space is a native. We're going to set that to auto, and that's going to apply to all SDR games, whether on the Xbox, the PlayStation, the Switch. And then on the Xbox, we're just going to set it to 4K 120 with VRR for games only. Now here is the game bar that pops up. So if you click on this, you'll see there's different profiles. Now if you're going for accuracy, those aren't going to matter because you're just going to keep it in standard. And if you want to do different profiles for different types of games, you can. That's what they're there for. But again, for accuracy, it's just one and done. Alright, now for the HGIG setup on the Xbox, to pull both triggers and both bumpers, you set the first one all the way to black, so it says 000. Then we're going to leave the game HDR setting on, and we're going to set both of the white screens to 800 nits, and then you're going to be done with the Xbox setup. Over on the PlayStation 5, we're going to go all the way down, and then we're going to count 14 clicks up. Doesn't matter if the sun actually disappears or not. And then same thing on the second white pattern here. And then again for black, just go all the way down so it's 000. And then pretty much everything else here you can just leave on automatic. And if you're curious, it doesn't support 1440p, but that's alright. So that's it. That's all the settings for the Samsung Q80B. Thank you all for watching. I hope this helps you out. If so, hit the like button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.